If you remind people of their death, it changes their behaviors. The most famous study of this was some Arizona judges who were recommending they were recommending a bail, like the price that would be paid for somebody whose crime was the solicitation of prostitution. And they were asked to recommend a bond. And half of the judges were just reminded of the existence of death on like a questionnaire. I can't remember how it was done, but it's subtle. It's not like you're going to die. It's like, have you got life insurance? Yes or no? That the kind of questions like that just put it on the mind. Yeah. And those judges recommended hundreds of dollars more on average than the control group. That's really strange. And the idea of terror management theory is that when you're reminded of your death, you're more, in the short term, you're more in need of reaffirming the death-denying aspects of your culture. And so for a judge, the thing that allows them to sort of escape their feeling of mortality is participating in this legal system which sort of exists above and beyond them. And so being reminded of their death makes them want to lean into that more. That to me seems a little bit tenuous. But it certainly seems to show that death has some kind of effect on our motivation. Okay, so empirical studies, and people have made all kinds of claims that people reminded of their death will do all sorts of things. They'll be more willing to support preemptive nuclear strikes against countries which pose no threat. Like they'll sit further away from people who aren't like them. Muslims become more derogatory towards Jews, or Jews towards Christians, or vice versa, just by being reminded of death. People become more religious after being reminded by death. Even atheists become more religious.
Like a materialist at the moment on their deathbed to start praying, because the hell, why not?
Why not take the wager then? The reminder of death seems, so that's like, the empirical stuff, but like I say, a bit patchy, but just intuitively, like you say, there seem to be just moments where we can take a guess that death would have a motivation. For example, suppose you're writing your magnum opus, you're working on a book, and it's your life work. It's your life's work. You've been working on this for all of your life, and you're near the end of your life. You're like an old age pensioner. And you figure out you're going to finish the book about a week before you die. You've got just enough time to finish it and get it out. But then I told you that after you die, so you publish the book, and then you die, and then a week after you die, an asteroid is going to come and hit the Earth and kill everyone instantly. You're already dead. You never see this at all, and no one knows that it's coming. But I'm telling you now, that's going to happen. Are you now more or less motivated to finish your book before you die? That's a real question. What do you think that would do to your motivation?
I think in the vast majority of cases, it would demotivate them for sure. I'd probably also be demotivated slightly. I think in a weird way, I view creation as something that wants to come through in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, I probably wouldn't change anything in terms of my, creation of that. In some weird way, it kind of living in the ethers of time, perhaps.
Yeah. Maybe you're it depends on the kind of person you are as well as to what you think happens after death or this kind of thing, right? But you recognize that it would be understandable for many people if they were demotivated. And you say that even if it wouldn't be enough to overcome you feel the intuitive force of being at least a bit demotivated. But why?
Also just a little bit bummed that everybody's going to die too.
Yeah, sure. That's a terrible thought. But again, even that is sort of like, why? Like you're not going to be here to experience that.
Yeah, I guess I suppose it depends on what you believe you is and where you go after you die and the existence of, if you come back or if that's just it for you, and in which case in a materialist view, it doesn't matter because there's no one to experience everyone dying or no one receiving your magnus opus,
And yet people do care, even if they say they're materialists, right? They'll say, I'm demotivated to finish that book. And I'm like, why is that the case? If when you die, it's just lights out and that's the end of it, it makes no difference to you in terms of finishing this book, whether everybody reads it after you die or not. It literally makes no difference. And if people talk the talk, they say, I'm doing it for its own sake. I'm doing it to just get it out of me. I need to do it for my own sake. But then you confront them with this idea that it's going to be burned after they die. And suddenly, at least a little bit, it's like, oh, I don't know now. Like, why? I thought you were just doing it for its own sake. Maybe the reason that, like, okay, so here's to bring it back to the question. If it's the case that this book not actually outlasting you would give you less reason to write it, does that tell us maybe that part of the reason why you are writing it and why you are motivated to get it done is because you know that it will outlive you? And so maybe not so far as terror management theory, but we can say that our knowledge that we're going to die makes us want to do things which will outlive us. It's a way of escaping death. It's a way of denying death, as Ernest Becker had it. And so without this fear of death, maybe we wouldn't be motivated to do anything at all. It would, but because we'd have no reason to try to contribute to things that are going to outlive us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if we were just going to live forever, where is the urgency to need to do a podcast or do really anything when we can always just get to it one day, I suppose? And so I think there is a powerful immediacy that the reflection of our mortality brings us. And like that presence, I think it's a powerful meditative and philosophical exploration to contemplate one's own death. Because I think we're often under this presumption that we're just going to kind of live forever just because like we're just existing here. And
that's how people act.
Right.
That's
that's how
feel.
I act.
I mean,
you know,
look, we are in an emergency. This is an emergency, man. Like, this is great. I was invited in a couple of days. I'm going to do this debate about fearing death, and the motion was something like, resolved. We should not fear death. And they invited me along and said, "Oh, we'd love to come and have you debate this." And I said, "I'll do it, but I have to do the we should fear death side. That's the side I'm going to be on, because I think that a healthy fear of death is crucial. Because otherwise, like you say, I mean." Maybe it'd be better if there were no death. I'm not even commenting on that question. I'm saying as long as it is the case that it's on its way, it should be like the most important thing. And so the terror management theorists say that it is. It's just we've pushed it down to the subconscious because it's not nice to think about. But of course this is motivating. Surely this is the motivating factor. Because look, if I told you had a week to live, if you got some terminal illness, you got a week to live, how's that going to change your life? You're going to make much more of an effort over the next week to spend time with the people that you love, to do the things that you want to do, to get them out of your system. Right, cool. What if it were a month? Okay, still some urges. Maybe there'd be a bit more freedom. You'd travel a bit more. You'd spend a bit more. Maybe you'd make a YouTube video, which you wouldn't do if you only had a week. Cool. But you'd still be like, I need to get as much done as possible. And the fact that you've now got a month rather than a week doesn't mean you do the week's worth of stuff and just spread it out over a month and be relaxed about it. No, you do more because you got more time. Gosh, I really need to make the most out of this month. If I said you've got 3 years to live, same thing. Suddenly, everything's urgent. You want to get as much done as you can. And you don't just do the month stuff and be more relaxed about it. No, you fill it with as much as you can because, God, you've only got three years to live. Well, here's the thing, man. Like, you can keep pushing that out until you get to 50, 60, 70, and then that's just the situation you're in. Mm-hmm. That emergency doesn't disappear. But I think because of its inevitability and because it's not like someone sits you down one day and says, "Hey, man, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you've got 68 years to live, roughly." Best estimate to say. I mean, it's crazy. You could, it would be a horrible prank to play. It would be really, really horrible. But if somebody took someone in their, in their 40s or 50s, brought them into the doctor's office, and the doctor said, "I've got some really bad news. You've got there's this truth about you, which means that, we think you've got about 30 or 40 years to live." They probably go, "Oh gosh," and what have they got? It's just mortality, man, because that's true of everybody. Like, I think it would pay. In other words, I'm agreeing with you that it pays to reflect on that mortality and recognize that it should have the same kind of urgency as if you were given a terminal diagnosis for a week or a month or a year. It will change it. It will make it slightly less urgent, but the urgency doesn't go away, and it just means that you fill it with more stuff.
Yeah.
You don't dilly-dally and just spread it all out. No, you do as much as you can because it's time to dilly up.